Yeah, that's a very slick move there. Now, actor Charlie Sheen, best known for his funny film and TV roles, of course, but this week it's his video message that's grabbing headlines.
Yeah, he's posted a video urging President Obama to reopen the investigation into the 9/11 terrorist attacks. He believes the Bush administration was part of a massive cover-up and says there are still thousands of unanswered questions.
We have questions, Mr. President. Lots of questions. A lot of them are detailed in my letter, but trust me, there are hundreds more questions. As my letter chronicles, sir, the 9/11 Commission itself says they were lied to, deceived, and essentially prevented from carrying out a real investigation.
It does. That's what
Truly independent congressional investigation into the events of 9/11 as well as its aftermath.
Yeah, well, as you heard in that clip, the people who believe Charlie Sheen say that they are patriotic and they're true Americans and they want these questions answered. So does Charlie Sheen have a point, or is this just another bizarre conspiracy theory? Here to tell us more, 9 US Bureau Chief Robert Penfold. Good morning to you, Rob.
Hi, Cam.
What is America making of Charlie Sheen?
Well, I think a lot of Americans thought, what's he smoking, perhaps, you know, and I don't think really in the next day or two he will get a call from President Obama, because Charlie has said this a few times before, and his theory is that something other than the 19 hijackers, someone other than them, was behind all of this. And of course he has before blamed the administration here of George W. Bush. Now, people say, well, this has been investigated before. But a lot of these conspiracy theories, I think, are about people just don't believe that it could be so simple, that 19 men with razor blades could get on and crash into those buildings and bring those buildings down as they did. Well, he's one of those ones who believes, in fact, that the CIA perhaps planted explosives in the building, but really, generally, Americans aren't taking too much credence from that.
Yeah, this theory about the explosives bringing down the buildings, why do people think that? And what's the rebuttal from the experts?
Well, I think, later, as I say, I think it's about people thinking that really it can't be that simple. Surely these men just couldn't do that, get on the plane, and what we saw in the end, nearly 3,000 people killed. Here, the authorities will not investigate it again. They've been through it all over again, and Charlie Sheen and others will just have to keep whistling into the wind, because they really won't get any further with it. And basically, he's taken as a bit of a joke, and other people are saying, in fact, let's not forget that his new TV series is starting in the next month or two as well, and is he just looking for a bit of publicity?
Yeah, well, he's got a bit of traction with some of our viewers here. They all point to World Trade Center building number 7, which was not struck by a plane, and they say, why did it fall down?
Well, that's right. Well, and again, the engineers will tell you that there was such extraordinary situation happening there with the fire and the collapse of all the buildings that it was weakened, and they've shown architecturally that could happen. The building was weakened just because of what was happening around it, the intense heat and flames and the explosions themselves, and that's why the building came down. But of course, people do want to believe, yes, that building was part of the ones that exploded and blew up hours later. How did it happen? Engineers will tell them it's easy, it's simple.
Now, what about plane number 4? That's United 93. Some people say that plane was shot down.
Yeah, that's right, and they're saying part of the conspiracy theory too, but who could ever believe that? How could the administration, the Bush administration, get a plan like that together and get the Air Force up there to shoot a plane down and bring it down? It's laughable, in fact, and these people will continue to push this. But also it upsets, as you can imagine, this being only the September 11 only yesterday here in the United States. Members who were involved with that, certainly firefighters, were talking this morning about how disgusted they were that these sorts of ideas could be brought up again on this day.
After 8 years of analysis of all this, what do they say now happened on that day? Why weren't... how did these terrorists breach such a strong air safety system?
Well, the air safety system at the time wasn't that strong. That was the problem. You know, you try to get through an airport here, and even with a phone or a pocket full of coins, and all the alarms will go off. You can't even wear your shoes through the detectors here. But in those days, the detectors weren't anywhere near as powerful as they are these days, and that's how they did. You can just see how they did it. You've seen it on video that they first put things off to the side, and in fact, what they actually smuggled onto those planes was not explosives or anything, but in fact just small box cutters. They were small plastic things with razor blades in them, and of course once they got on that plane they unsheathed the razor blades, got into the cockpits, and the rest is history.
Yeah, some people say, why didn't the US Air Force, you know, which is supposed to be strong, intercept at least one plane? One of the answers that I read to that is that there was some kind of massive training exercise on that day, and that people thought that perhaps these terrorist attacks were part of the training exercise initially.
Well, I think the biggest decision, of course, to be made was, do we shoot down a plane full of innocent American citizens? And that was the problem with the one plane that they were tracking, yes, as it travelled north of New York. But of course, who was going to make that decision? And it all happened in over a 45-minute period, and there was no way that they could work out really what was happening to the degree that they would actually, that anybody really could seriously take a decision to shoot down that one plane that was still fully loaded with passengers. That flight, of course, was heading from New York over here to the West Coast, and it was fully loaded, and there's no way that the Air Force at that stage said they could make that decision in that amount of time.
Now, Rosie O'Donnell came out on The View a couple of years ago saying that jet fuel doesn't reach the kind of temperatures that could possibly have this effect on bringing down the World Trade Center, and that steel doesn't melt. Was that disproven?
Yes, it was. Everything that came out in that inquiry was the same. There was just so much fire in the furnace of that. And don't forget that these buildings were burning from the top down, and they started to melt. Once everything started to collapse up the top, that's when the rest of the building came down as well. So the conspiracy theorists have come up with all these ideas, but over and over again they've been disproved, and people just don't take them seriously here at all.
Now, the London train bombings, there's also some conspiracies about that apparently the train the bombers caught didn't exist, that there was a government cover-up, that there wasn't a full independent inquiry into them. Is there something about terrorist attacks that engenders this kind of skepticism?
Well, I think so. It comes down to, you know, as you can imagine, in that particular case, the theorists say that was really a plot to discredit Muslims, and it was put together by the British Secret Service as well, who were trying to, at that stage, to try, for some reason they say that they would go it. Also, that there was the theorists also pointed to the fact that the train did not exist that they supposedly came down on from the north down to London at the time. Now, that in fact, that whole theory, their theory came from an original mistake in the inquiry itself, where they mistimed the statement. In their statement, the time of that train, and everyone picked up on that. The theorists said there was no train at that time. That was right, but in fact the inquiry just had that timing wrong.
Yep. Thank you very much for that, Rob. I think you got it right off the bat, saying that sometimes the simple truth isn't enough for people. They want the story to be bigger and better.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, indeed. That's right. Okay.
Rob Penfold in the US. I'd like those people who think that normal fire won't burn or melt steel to see this lawnmower that I saw after the Victorian bushfires. A bloke took me onto his property and said, come and have a look at this. He showed me in his garden shed, which had been raised, a pool, a beautiful swirl of different coloured metals, and that had been his lawnmower.
Wow.
And it was now just about that flat, and just, of course, it had reset by then, and he was going to hang it on his wall.
Yeah, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. Fanned by those winds, fire is capable of a lot more than it normally is.
Well, I'm not sure we convinced anybody. I think if you want to believe a conspiracy theory, you will.
That is your right.
We'll be back with more of Today in just a moment.